So here's a more realistic project. Attached you find this project where after you downloaded it, you need to add in your Firebase links, and therefore, to understand what's going on here, you should make sure that you did not skip the HTTP course section, the section where I talk about connecting React apps to a backend. There I show how to set up Firebase as a dummy backend, and I show how sending HTTP requests works, which is of course something you need a lot in any kind of application you're building basically. So in this application here, we are sending requests, and if you want to follow along on your system, you should therefore make sure that you have a Firebase account. You can get started for free as shown in this HTTP course section, and that there you are using the real-time database, and you got your rules configured like this. Set both read and write to true, or use the default test mode configuration, and then use this URL, which you find under data, and use that URL here instead of my URL. Keep the /tasks.json part though, you will need that. So that's what you should do to follow along. But what's this application doing? Once you updated the code and you installed all dependencies with npm install and you started the project with npm start, this is what you'll see on the screen. It's a simple tasks application, a very simple one actually, where initially the tasks are loaded. And if we have no tasks, we of course have to add some tasks first. For example, learn all about hooks. And you simply click add task, and now this is sent to Firebase. It's also displayed down there. And if you reload the application, it's loaded and displayed. And it's stored here on Firebase. Now I am only using what you learned in the HTTP course section, and this all works by sending a HTTP request with the fetch API, by handling errors and a loading state, by transforming the data when it arrives, and by then displaying the data. And we got various involved components, but most importantly, we got the app.js component where we are fetching tasks with this fetch task function, which is either executed because the component loaded due to use effect, or because inside of this tasks component a button was clicked, a button which is shown if we had an error, which allows us to try again. So that's when this fetch task function is triggered in the app component. And besides that, in the new task component, we got the enter task handler function where we also send a request, but here we are sending a post request with some data attached to store task data on Firebase. And this function is triggered whenever this task form is submitted in the end, which happens when this button is clicked and we verified the entered value. Now, feel free to pause the video and dig a bit deeper into the code, but that is what's going on here. And if you followed along in the HTTP course section, which you should have, then this is all basically just something you already saw. Now, I did create this basic yet more realistic example because here we also got another chance of adding at least one custom hook. And do you see where we could utilize a custom hook? Well, we got two similar kind of operations in two different parts of this application. And that would be here in the new task component when we send a request to store data, and in the app component when we send a request to get data. Now, regarding the details, the code is different. When we get the tasks, we configure the request like this. We send a GET request without a body and without headers. And we have some transformation logic, which we apply to the response. Whereas in the new task case, we send a POST request and we do add data, and we have a different transformation logic for the response. But even though these details are different, there are a lot of parts where the code is pretty much the same. For example, in both components, we are managing a loading and an error state, and we are setting the loading and error states in the same way. We are also having the same error handling logic here, and so on. So there are parts which are quite similar. And because that's the case, because we have some code duplication, some code reusage here, because of that, we might want to consider outsourcing this logic into a separate function. But since the logic, or at least parts of the logic, which is being reused, contains the usage of other React hooks and the usage of state, since that's the case, a regular function won't do the trick, because there we're not allowed to use React hooks. That's why here we have a great opportunity for building a custom hook where we outsource the HTTP logic and then still in the end can reuse that stateful logic for the loading and error state. And that's therefore what we're going to do now. We're now going to apply our custom hook knowledge to build another custom hook, but this time a custom hook which in the end encapsulates this HTTP logic. Definitely feel free to try this on your own first. It'll definitely be challenging, and there also will not just be one single way of doing this. Nonetheless, try it on your own first. In the next lecture, we're going to implement it together.